All right, go ahead.
All right, well, my name's Mercy. We're at Hawkbound Sanctuary right now, and today we're going to learn how to put on telemetry units. So these little radio VHF tags or any type of transmitter that you want to put on. This is your general harness making and harness deployment for a telemetry unit.
This particular one is actually a transmitter from Cellular Tracking Technologies and will send signals to cell phone towers.
Exactly. So what we have here is just, first of all, our unit, like Dan mentioned, from CTT. We also have our Teflon ribbon. As you can see, it's just a thin ribbon made from Teflon, and a leather breast patch. So this is just carved out of kangaroo leather. So we're starting out with the leather breast patch fed through one set of holes with the Teflon tape, the Teflon ribbon. So this is how we're starting out. And then from here, once we have it through this first set of holes, we're going to have to feed the end of the Teflon into the unit itself. So when the unit is going to be sitting on the bird, we're going to want to feed the Teflon tape through the top holes. So if the unit fits this way, we're going through these holes. If it fits this way, we're going to go through these holes. But for this particular unit, we have to go through these holes to make our harness so that it's ready for the bird. So you can see there's two very small holes there. So step one is just to feed our Teflon right through the holes. A task easier said than done, but definitely doable. So we can see the Teflon is making its way through and may need some guidance using some hemostats. See, it's poking out the other side. We can just grab it and pull. Perfect. So once the unit is on the Teflon ribbon, you can now pull it. It'll give us a little bit of slack in the Teflon. And now we have to feed the Teflon ribbon through the other set of holes on the leather breast patch. So to do that, we're going to use our hemostats. We're going to go through the little slit in the leather breast patch, and we're going to grab our Teflon ribbon. So right at the top should do the trick. We don't want to put too much pressure on the leather so it doesn't get too big of a hole, and we're just going to pull it right through. Once we get it through one hole, we can let the Teflon go up and behind for the second hole so that we're grabbing it on its correct side, and just grabbing that Teflon ribbon again. All right, once we have it, we're just going to pull it through again. And there we are. So this process is done in the field before we even get our hands on the bird. So you'll see in total it almost looks like the unit on a little loop, which then has two tails that come off the breast patch. So once we get the bird in hand, so we have our peregrine falcon here, we're going to start out by just putting the loop over the head of the bird. So we'll want our unit to be on the back of the bird, pretty much square between where the wings attach to the bird. And the leather breast patch should sit right at the top of the keel. Since this bird doesn't have any bones, we're going to say that's about right where the white and brown meet.
And this is our surrogate peregrine falcon, right? It's
Exactly. This is not a peregrine falcon, Dan.
yeah, this is a little bald eagle, stuffed bald eagle.
Exactly. So once we have the bird in hand, the first thing is just to put the loop over the head. Okay, you'll see there's quite a bit of slack here. So I typically have one person hold the unit down in between the wings as we slowly tighten until our breast patch is where it needs to be. Okay, so once our breast patch is right at the top of the keel, or for this instance right here, now we can work on using the tails of the Teflon to feed up and under the wings. So we're just going to grab all of the wing feathers, the primaries, the secondaries, make sure that we're not pinching any feathers, just going up and under the wing. And then I'm going to trim this just a little bit so we have a better edge. Trimming on an angle reduces fraying as well as gives you a nice sharp edge for feeding through small areas. So once we're up and under the wing, now we're going to feed it through that second set of tubes. I'm just going to go right in, hopefully. Once you get a start, you can use the hemostat to grab it from within the two. Okay, so we see that we can probably grab it from there, pull it in, and we have to, of course, go through that second hole. And there we go. So now we have one of the tails fed through the transmitter like this.
Mm-hmm.
So now we just use the other tail. So returning back to that breast patch, we still have one more tail of Teflon to use. So we're gonna do the exact same thing. So we're gonna grab the wing, primaries and secondaries all together, feed it right underneath, and now we're going to feed this also through the holes in the transmitter. So this is where things get a little tricky since the hole is pretty small and the Teflon's pretty wide. So I typically gather up the Teflon that's already through the holes and pinch it to one side. So this gives us a little more area behind the current Teflon so we can try to fit the second piece in there. So actually I might pinch this one up so that we can then use the hole to grab this new piece for the hemostat. Just gonna try to feed it in. So we're making some progress. So now we can grab it with our hemostat. Okay, and right through the second hole, hopefully. There we are. All right, so now we can tighten that up. And we see we have our unit and our two tails have both been fed through, and now it's just about assessing the fit and tying the knots. So you can see this is a pretty comfortable fit. The breast patch stayed in place. We don't have to worry too much about that. So now it's more about how tight the harness is. So I typically just see the fit by putting my fingers underneath it. If I can fit an entire finger underneath it, it's a little loose, but if I can just get the very tips of my finger under it, that gives the bird enough wiggle room to be able to feel comfortable in their harness. So we're gonna tie a quick test square knot. So we're not gonna tie this very tight, just as a square knot goes, so left over right, and right over left. Again, this should be pretty loose. It's for us to assess the fit. So that's pretty loose in my opinion. We also want to preen the feathers around the Teflon because any feathers that are under the Teflon, once they're preened out by the bird, it's going to make this really loose. So this bird obviously doesn't have feathers, but we'll preen around, preen underneath these pieces of Teflon, and then we'll assess the fit again. And yeah, that's definitely a little loose. So since we tied our square knot very loose, we can go ahead and just untie it. Band down the hatches a little bit. Always making sure to talk to your other person to make sure that leather breast patch is in place. And once you're happy with the tightness of it, just making that square knot again. So I recommend keeping the square knot pretty loose until the very end. So your first knot can be a little tight, but then your right over left can be nice and loose. We assess the fit. That looks good to me. I can just barely fit my fingertips under it, but I can't really fit my entire finger under it.
And that applies not only to the kestrels, but other species as well.
It should, yeah. You can ask JF for sure, but this foam pad should definitely help with the bird's comfort, but we like to leave a little bit of space underneath there. So once we're happy with that, we would tighten this all the way, so just pulling it until the Teflon can't go any tighter. I'm not going to do this because this is for a demonstration and I want you to be able to untie it and retie it later. But the next step then is we do a couple different backups for our Teflon knot here. So one of them is to use dental floss. So this is a wax dental floss. We're just going to grab a little strip of that and we're going to feed it through a curved needle. So you can see the eye on a curved needle is pretty large. So we're able to just feed the dental floss right through it. Okay, so we have some dental floss on a needle. And now what we're going to use this for is to reinforce our Teflon knot. So to do that, we would grab our little Teflon tails, and you can trim these if they're a little shorter than they are here, or a little longer than they are here. We're just going to grab our piece of Teflon with the hemostat. We're going to poke through the Teflon with the needle. Of course, being cautious of where the sharp point of the needle is and where the bird is. Pulling that dental floss through, and grabbing our other Teflon tail and doing the exact same thing. So we're just going to poke through. And there it is. So now we have our dental floss all the way through. And now we have two tails that we can tie here with the dental floss. So just as we did the Teflon, a square knot, so left over right. I'm going to do this pretty light again so that we can undo it. And then right over left. And that's it. So now you can see that we have the big Teflon knot. We have a small dental floss knot holding the tails of that Teflon knot together. And it's a pretty secure system. So at this point, we would trim off the ends of the dental floss. With the Teflon, you'll want to leave like a little bit of space, maybe 1 centimeter of space, trimming it at an angle. But for the dental floss, we can go right up to it since it is wax and it's going to hold its shape there in the knot. So that's how we deploy a transmitter. So after this, we would then use an epoxy. We usually use Gorilla Glue 5-minute epoxy. We would mix it on a scrap piece of paper or plastic and then apply just a pea-sized amount onto this knot system that we have going here. So when your Teflon's trimmed, you should have 2 tails about this length. We want to cover both of the ends of the tails to reduce fraying. We want to cover the dental floss knot and all of the Teflon knot. So all of this can then be made into a little blob using your pencil and either stuck onto the unit or stuck so that it just sits nicely off the back of the bird.
Right, and while you're applying the glue, you slip a card underneath to block. Exactly.
So we don't
block
have
the glue from gumming up the feathers. Yeah.
Exactly. So we didn't have a card here, but basically, this bird is large. The card just goes up and under the unit. And we have little slits cut in ours.
Yeah.
So we put a little card or a little piece of paper that's thick underneath the unit so that all this glue will not run into the feathers.
Right.
So you'll get a better idea of that with the kestrels where it's in the field. But
all right. Well, thanks so much, Missy.
of course, yes.
Great explanation. Really appreciate it. It's going to be a big help.
Perfect.
Take care.